Hey everyone, welcome to today's webinar. We'll just give it another sort of 2-3 minutes, just allow everyone to join, any sort of last minute stragglers, and then we will crack on with today's content. So yeah, take 2 minutes, sit back and relax, and then we'll get going with the content very shortly. All right. Time's just ticked over to 1:03, so we will crack straight on. To introduce myself, my name is Phil Kodecker. I am the marketing manager here at SpinFX IT for EMEA, and today's webinar will be on the hidden ROI of better payroll reporting. If this isn't the topic you signed up for, stay anyway. It's really interesting, and then you can watch the webinar that you did sign up for on demand later on. But in terms of sort of today's topic, traditionally people look at payroll reporting as a compliance or an administrative activity. But as we evolve and as kind of business evolves, the need for smarter, more connected reporting is growing. And so sort of HR and payroll teams are suddenly asking questions like, how can reporting become a strategic asset for decision making? Where can automation and flexibility deliver real ROI for the rest of the business? How do we ensure these improvements survive the shift to the cloud? And to answer questions like that and some more, I'm joined today by Brendan Andrews-Warmouth, who's our VP of Alliances and Product Enablement here in EMEA, and by Matthew Katakis, who is our global COO. Together, they have over 40 years of SAP HR and payroll experience, leading, running projects. And so, yeah, they're here to sort of impart their knowledge and expertise on some of the kind of key questions that we'll be answering today. Yeah, hi guys, welcome.
Thanks a lot. Good to be here, Philco.
Thanks, Philco. Hi, everybody.
So I guess, Brendan, I'll ask the kind of first question to you, and let's set the scene really. When we look at payroll reporting in SAP right now, what does manual reporting actually look like in practice?
Yeah, good question, Philco. So, I mean, I guess the people who are on the call, probably some of us have a lot of experience with this, but basically the way to kind of think about it is, in a certain way, it's a little bit controlled chaos, right? There's a lot of manual work in terms of using different transactions, using different functionalities within the standard SAP to extract information, doing things like using your workhorse tools like your wage type report or your ad hoc query, maybe some of the less secure, riskier options like SE16N and things like that, where you don't necessarily have the great security. Ultimately, taking that outside of the system and then using either an Excel or an Access database or something like that to bring that data together. Obviously, there's a lot of manual effort around that. And what does that mean? Normally, it means also there's the potential for manual errors. So someone sitting there writing VLOOKUP, someone sitting there building pivot tables. How repeatable is that? How automated is that? How reliable is that? Is obviously a big challenge for the payroll teams. Oftentimes we see, people have built really great reports. They've got some really great Excel macros that pull everything together, and ultimately they get something really great at the end, but they spend a lot of time on it. There's a huge risk around, is that well documented? Is that repeatable? Can other people pick that up if I'm sick or, I move on to another organization or something like that? And obviously, yeah, ultimately introducing a lot of risk in terms of, oh, I accidentally pushed the wrong button, I typed the wrong formula. All of a sudden, that whole effort of putting that report together kind of falls apart.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I guess coming back to kind of one of the points I made in kind of the introduction, Matt, in terms of sort of organizations still seeing payroll reporting as a compliance or an admin function, how do we look wider to see if there are any more benefits to a better reporting structure?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think, first of all, to step it up, Phil, I think every organization, I believe, should have a reporting strategy. Okay, and that's from the executive down to the operating function. So start with that philosophy. I think what's critically important is really around having the right structures of data, so you can then report at a transactional operational level, and then obviously at a rolled up enterprise level. I think that's fundamental. I think really what it does is it unlocks the visibility of information for you to make quick decisions. I mean, in today's technology, where we're trying to automate as many processes as possible across HR and payroll, I think what's also important is to take the same sort of approach with reporting as well, and think about it in those terms. When you're running a payroll process, then you're having a set of reporting outputs, making quick decisions to ensure that, for instance, your payroll is accurate. I think thinking about it in those terms is really the right way to go about it. At the end of the day, Philco, what's also important is payroll is fundamental to every organization globally, right? You pay people correctly, no one's going to say a thing. You pay people incorrectly, things are going to go wrong. You know, it's going to hit the press. So the last thing you want to be doing is to kind of have those situations. But so thinking about a reporting strategy, having access to the right data, making the right decisions real time, having that information and visibility immediately to make those decisions, I think is fundamental to any sort of successful, operating function across payroll.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess when considering some of those benefits, what type of insights can more consistent and flexible reporting offer businesses?
No, I mean, you can get quite detailed, and then you can sort of roll it up. You can, gather information and make decisions around, how much overtime people are being paid, what sort of leave absences do we have, are we in fact got the right calculating outcomes for tax, for instance. These are some very fundamental technical, pieces of information that you can make decisions on. So having the right sort of dashboards available to you to sort of quickly analyze how a particular part of an organization is performing when it comes to how much we pay folks, what sort of overtime we're paying them. I believe having that information at your fingertips is fundamental to any business being, run well and run efficiently. The other thing also, which is quite interesting with payroll reporting, is that it also can be a feeder to the, as I mentioned earlier, the strategic reporting that you're doing. So being able to extract a lot more of that detail and then roll that up at a group level, having the right sort of technology to do that, I think is fundamental.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's really important just to add to that, Matt, is I guess, especially when we start to look at what does the future look like for our payroll folks, building that foundation with the right reporting, the right data allows you not only to make those quick decisions, but especially as you start to look at your AI strategy, your analytics strategy, those types of things, setting the scene, you have to build on a solid foundation. You can't just implement AI thinking, well, we've got all this kind of data that's a bit of a mess in our system, but if we put an AI on top of it or we put an analytics engine on top of it, all of a sudden we're going to get good insights. You need to make sure that you have that foundation, and having that reporting strategy is what enables that as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I guess to build those fundamentals, and I guess really to implement any new strategies, ABAP development tends to be the fallback for a lot of organizations. Key when providing kind of new reports inside SAP. Now, whilst of course that's great in terms of building that structure, are there any kind of hidden costs in relying purely on ABAP?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, ABAP programming, ABAP custom development has been kind of a foundational for a lot of customers over the years, and that's been, that's the flexibility that you get working with the SAP system, right? But ultimately, as you say, Philco, there's a lot of hidden costs or not so hidden costs. Oftentimes there's things like, well, how quickly can you respond to requirements is probably the simplest one. Anytime you have an ABAP development, you have to build out the scope. You have to make sure you can explain it to an ABAP developer, because the payroll person's the one who knows what they want and how do they actually translate that into the requirements for a developer. And then, of course, you end up with technical debt. Someone's built all those custom reports. Maybe they've partially documented them or documented the original build, but then changes have happened. That becomes a real technical debt, which becomes a real problem, especially when you start to look at, okay, we want to move to the cloud. We really want to follow SAP's key strategy, clean core strategy. We don't want to have all this customization, this lack of flexibility. We can't publish these reports into the SuccessFactors homepage via self-service. We can't integrate data from other systems via APIs. All of that's kind of off the table, and we just end up with what would be, yes, reports that deliver what we needed potentially 4 or 5 years ago at the time we asked for them, but have no real capability to change with our requirements, and basically just end up a major maintenance burden for us. Like I said, most of the time, and this is not a criticism of web app developers, but how often are those things documented, right? It's how many times have we talked to customers and said, well, can you show us what that report definition looks like? Well, can you read the ABAP code? That's what the report definition looks like.
Yeah, a real classic example, Philco, is that typically the first developer who built that ABAP is probably not in the organization or has moved on to something else.
Yeah.
And then another developer comes in and has to try to do an update. For instance, if there's an upgrade in the SAP environment and that report, for instance, doesn't work, you have a lot of those situations where that maintenance overhead is just significant.
Yeah.
And the cost is just significant. So the technical debt is one part of it, but just the administrative and financial burden as well is quite high. So the opportunity by using a standard technology that's certified out of the box, I think, is key.
Yeah, and I guess that kind of leads quite nicely on to the next question in terms of if you're looking to not rely solely on ARAP sort of development, sort of what can organizations do to gain some quick wins in their payroll reporting? How can investment in tools or technologies or different processes help businesses?
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I think it's something that we spend a lot of time talking to customers about, as you can well imagine, because ultimately you want to think about things like Matt said, your larger reporting strategy. So oftentimes it's a big fish or a big target that you're going for. But how do you achieve those quick wins? It's things like looking for solutions, products, things that provide pre-delivered content, things that have experience of the people who built it immediately available to you as a user. Things that are easy to use for a business user. So don't give me a tool that I then have to pass over to IT and ask for them to do an implementation project for me, because then I'm waiting on that same development cycle, that same implementation cycle that I might have had on the ABAP side as well. And I guess that the thing that we see as kind of, I guess, what you would call a quick win, but also an ongoing win, you want to look at it. I know SAP's been talking about it a lot. We start to repeat the same things, being in the ecosystem, the flywheel that you get, the acceleration of the improvements is once you have a solution in place that helps you with those quick wins, the faster you can automate that manual work, the more time you have to remove some of those other manual processes, automate more processes. The more you do that, the more and more time you have. Before you know it, your quick wins, 5 reports, 10 reports, 20 reports, is 100, is 150, is 200. And then you've gained yourself a massive amount of time just through that kind of quick win, but that flywheel of improvement, reporting maturity, delivering on that strategy.
Yeah. If I could add one thing too, Phil, I think, when you think about these technologies, it's also empowering the end user. I think that's really important as well, right? It's not that you don't work closely with IT. IT will always implement the technology into the environment. We'll have all the governance and the controls and the security, which is fantastic. Some organizations we've seen have empowered the end user to be building out the reporting capability. In other cases, they've actually given it, handed it over to IT. But the turnaround and the response time, going back to that quick wins topic, is really significantly better. Because most technologies these days should be, drag and drop, easy to sort of set up, see sample outputs of reporting to make decisions on pretty quickly. So you can, within hours, you can be running reports that pretty much are fundamental to your payroll processes.
Yeah. And I guess as kind of the SAP payroll landscape changes, Matt, the need to migrate to cloud is also growing ever closer.
Yeah.
What can payroll leaders do to protect the investment that they've already made in improving payroll reporting, or to protect any investment that they would be looking to make before they even migrate?
Yeah, I think, again, I'm going to keep going to the reporting strategy, but I think even further than that is think about when you're now moving into the cloud, you're moving into a whole new ecosystem. Payroll processes and functions fundamentally, the foundations of calculating payroll results, paying people through bank transfers, those things won't change. But the value add that will come with investing in a payroll solution in the cloud is quite profound. From having access to AI tools, having access to certified reporting tools, being able to make decisions a lot more quicker, using the capacity of infrastructure to sort of expand as you go into new countries globally, if you're expanding a business, let's say. So I think when you think about the investment, you need to understand what you had, you need to understand what you need, and then you make that transitions from the as is and the to be. They're fundamental processes you always go through. And the way I think about that is, okay, if I had 10 reports that were really helping me run my payroll processes, first question I ask myself is, do I need those 10 reports? Okay, and let's say I do. The second question is, were they in ABAP or did I build them in Excel? Well, can I now move that away from Excel or ABAP and put them into a technology that sits embedded inside the cloud capability of payroll? And then from then, I've got a fantastic foundation that for me, I can start now expanding the value add that the cloud solutions provide today. Vendors such as SAP keep talking about it. And I think the thing holds true for reporting as well. Same sort of philosophy, same sort of strategy. Be cloud ready, and then you'll go many places for a very long time.
If I could just add one thing, I guess, to kind of put a bit more of a technical hat on it as well, is I think one of the key things, those are all really great points, but if we just look at it really from a more technical technology perspective, is also make sure whatever you're doing in terms of your report build is something that you can use in all of those ways and that you're empowered in the cloud. So is it something that's integrated with Payroll Control Center? Is it something that's integrated with an SAP Joule or other AI capabilities that you want to use and leverage in the business? Can you feed data into your different analytics engines? If you're building something yourself, you're custom building things in ABAP, you're doing things in Excel, you don't have those integration points, you don't get to leverage that value. If you have that investment in the solution and a tool that actually allows you to integrate across those other areas, then you've already got a leg up. As soon as you say, we're doing some dual payroll agent strategy, you've got an integration. We're going to go down the payroll control center path. We've got an integration. We're ready to go. We're not going to have to rebuild everything. Exactly. So it's another way of just kind of making sure we protect that investment.
Yeah. And I guess as leaders plan for what the future looks like, Brendan, how do you see the role of payroll reporting evolve, sort of past where it currently is, and kind of what should HR and payroll leaders be doing to prepare for that kind of more data-driven future?
Sure. So I think, the simple answer is, of course, that the way I think everybody sees it is, for sure, the future of payroll reporting is going in a way predictive, right? We want to be able to looking ahead and see, is something going to go wrong in this next payroll period? Am I going to have issues down the track in terms of making sure I'm making all the right tax payments, making sure I'm keeping compliant across all the different requirements? Especially as we see all these new types of legislation coming up. We have equal pay, we have, different types of governance coming in, all of those different things. How do I make sure that I'm ready and actually able to respond to those very quickly, being able to provide the information that everybody's asking of a payroll function? But I guess fundamentally, again, to go back to that foundation is, you're not going to get to that predictive level, you're not going to get to that analytics level if you don't have that foundation of, we have the right data, the payroll is running correctly, we know everything is working. Once we have that, then we can start to look at, you know what, I can detect anomalies using AI because my historical data is clean and clear and understandable. I can make sure I'm ready for an audit because I've already made sure every pay period I'm reconciling and sure that I've got all the right information. So I'm preparing myself for the future by ensuring that everything past, present, and in the future is already kind of reconciled and aligned. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, great. Amazing. And I guess to round off kind of the questions from my end, if you could kind of give one piece of advice to current HR and payroll leaders who are looking to, I guess, in quotations, sell the value of better reporting to executives, because I think the value is very clear. But if we're looking to sell it to executives, kind of what would that one piece of advice be? And Brendan, we'll start with you.
Sure. Look, I think to kind of build on or round up what I've been saying, I think one of the really key things that people respond to is look at this as a risk reduction strategy. Look at it as a future proofing for the way that your business is going to operate into the future. Make sure that, across the board, there's less errors, less manual work, no rework, all those governance pieces are in place that you need. And that's a very clear, strong message that I think any executive, all the way from the CEO down into the ranks of the CHRO, or even further down into the payroll team, everybody can understand and kind of get on board with that.
Yeah, I think another way to think about it or look at it at an executive level also, Philco, is from a payroll perspective, the executives just want a positive outcome payroll all the time. Not sometimes, all the time. And that's managing the risk and managing the costs. So I think having a reporting capability as part of your processes and your framework, I think is going to go a long, long way to sort of guaranteeing that certainty. And I think that's something that shouldn't be underestimated, especially, again, as we mentioned earlier, as you go into the cloud. I think it becomes part of the fundamentals rather than just an afterthought. So I think, as folks watching this recording, really sort of take that back into your organizations and ensure you've got the right reporting strategy and make that part of the outcome of a project that you're running.
Yeah. All right. Fantastic. Okay. Well, I'll open the floor to everyone else to ask any questions. I think that's probably enough questions from me. If you're listening, just look at the bottom of your screen. You'll see a nice little Q&A bubble, and sort of we've now got about 5 minutes still to answer any questions that you might have around the topic we discussed, around payroll reporting, and anything else you might want to know. So we'll just wait for a couple of questions to come in. And guys, while we wait for sort of those first questions to roll through, if I'm looking at, how do I, taking the quick wins into account that we spoke about earlier, and if I, as a business, am starting to think about how I can improve my own payroll reporting, what would you guys suggest is the first step that I make as sort of a payroll or HR leader to start doing that analysis of what would work best for me?
What did you go, Brendan?
I'll let you just take.
Oh, no.
No, I mean, I think that the way I would always look at it is, make sure, and I think the first step would always be for me, have a look at where you are in the journey, right? Like, do you have that reporting strategy already? What level are you at in your reporting maturity? I think is always worth having a look at, because, for some folks, the first step is really assessing how bad is the current situation? How much manual work are you doing, and how much risk do you have around those external reports and things like that? For some folks, it's really the first step is, look, we've got this really complex reporting capability. We've got a lot of reports that we've built, and it's all working. Our next step is, how do we transfer that into a future-proof technology? It's a slightly different first step, and I think it's really a question around where are you in your journey, I think.
If I can add, look, and the thing is, you don't have to solve the complete problem in one shot, Philco. You can, you look at the priority of the outcomes that you're looking for in reporting, and you kind of stage it, right? So I've seen many organizations where they've said, look, we need these fundamental reports to make these decisions that's going to de-risk our processes. These other ones we only report on, say, on a monthly or quarterly basis, so therefore they don't have to be as high a priority. So I think by also going, piece by piece is also a really safe strategy, as long as you are addressing the critical, the compliance type reporting first and foremost, right? Because especially when you transition to cloud, your first few runs at your payroll, you're going to have some bumps and bruises potentially. And then you just want to make sure you've got the right insurance framework, meaning reporting around there to kind of highlight some, okay, we've got some issues in this particular payroll area. This is where the payroll result was inaccurate for so many employees. This is how we're going to correct it. Rerun another payroll, and then you resolve the problem. But the reporting highlighted that issue to you, right? So it predicted it for you. I think as long as you understand those priorities of reporting, I think then you can set yourself a journey over time of where you want to go. And then you'll be surprised. I mean, it'll drive so much efficiency in your payroll operations business as well. And that frees up the payroll operators and the end users to be doing other things, which are quite fun, interesting across HR and payroll processes as well. So, yeah, I think that's the way I would think about it.
I guess it all boils down to having the right fundamentals and foundation in place, right? Because then
always
exactly.
you can't get away from that, unfortunately, or fortunately.
Awesome. All right, so either you guys have been so succinct that there are no other questions, or it's been such an interesting topic that sort of our audience just need to mull over the answers that you guys have given. As I said sort of at the start of the webinar, if you've got any questions that you think of, which tends to be the case, as soon as the webinar turns off, suddenly you've got 10 questions in your head that you did want answered. Just reach out to us and we'll make sure either Matt or Brendan come back to you directly, or the better internal person to answer your questions will also come back to you. In terms of sort of closing off this webinar, thank you so much for coming on to listen to us talk about the hidden payroll, the hidden sort of ROI of better payroll reporting. At the end of the webinar, you'll see a short little survey. It has about 3 questions on it just around the content. That if you could take sort of a minute or 2 just to answer, that'd be fantastic for us as well. And otherwise, thank you, Brendan, and thank you, Matt, for taking the time to join me.
Pleasure.
You're welcome.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.